What does it really mean to trust God and believe He will do what He says? Hello, and welcome back to Bible Basics. Today we're going to be reading Matthew 8. If it's your first time here, basically what we do is we like to read the Bible, give some commentary and some context, and then go through it together. And then in the following episode, we'll break it down and study it and get further in depth. So, like I said, we're reading Matthew 8. A little bit of recap on Matthew, the author. He was one of the 12 disciples. He has a first account of Jesus. His intended audience was a Jewish audience, so to convince them that Jesus was the Messiah. So he will quote the Old Testament frequently. Earlier, we saw Jesus' early life and how he was tested. And then in the last few chapters, he preached his most famous sermon, which was the Sermon on the Mount. Now Jesus is starting to heal people. And then an interesting fact is that Jesus always heals people differently. He doesn't really heal them the same. Whether he's touching them, whether he's saying something, whether he has them do a physical action, he heals people differently, which I think is very interesting. So like I said, today we're reading Matthew 8. And then before I want to give some context. So in the story that we're about to read, I read about leprosy. So leprosy is a bacterial disease that mostly affects the skin. So we're going to read that right now. Matthew 8, Jesus heals a man with leprosy. When Jesus came down the mountainside, large crowds followed him. A man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said. "Be clean." Immediately he was cleansed of his leprosy. Then Jesus said to him, "See that you don't tell anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest and offer the gift Moses commanded as testimony to them." So Jesus, he healed this man of leprosy just by, he didn't physically touch him, but he just said verbally to be healed, and he was, and he just commanded him to go show himself to the priest. And then context before we read verse 5. So this is going to involve a Roman centurion. Basically, during this time is Rome was occupying Israel, so they were in charge. And a Roman centurion, he was a Roman general. He commanded a group similar to captains in the U.S. Army. He wasn't even Jewish, so that's important. So let's read the next one. The faith of the centurion. When Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. "Lord," he said, "my servant lies at home paralyzed, suffering terribly." Jesus said to him, "Shall I come and heal him?" The centurion replied, "Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority with soldiers under me. I tell this one, 'Go,' and he goes, and that one, 'Come,' and he comes. I say to my servant, 'Do this,' and he does it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed and said to those following him, "Truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west, and I will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Then Jesus said this to the centurion, "Go, let it be done, just as you believed it would." And the servant was released at that moment. So something very unique about this interaction is that the centurion wasn't even Jewish. He had just heard about Jesus and he respected his authority. And Jesus really responded to that. He was amazed about how much faith he had in him, even though he wasn't even Jewish. And Jesus at the time was only preaching to Jewish people. Jesus heals many. When Jesus came into Peter's house, he saw Peter's mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. He touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she got up and began to wait on him. When evening came, many who were demon-possessed were brought to him, and he drove out the spirits with a word and healed all the sick. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. He took our infirmities and bore our diseases. So Jesus is healing people both physically and spiritually. So he's healing their physical bodies, but also their spiritual bodies. And then also Matthew, he's quoting the Old Testament again. The verse that he's quoting is Isaiah 53:4. The cost of following Jesus. When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake. Then a teacher of the law came to him and said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." Jesus replied, "Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." Another disciple said to him, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." But Jesus told him, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead." So now people are getting intrigued by Jesus. They're seeing all his miracles, seeing all the stuff that he's doing, and they want to follow him. But Jesus is kind of setting the standard, letting them know that following him is not an easy thing. It's going to require a lot of work. Let's keep reading. Jesus calms the storm. Then he got into the boat, and his disciples followed him. Suddenly, a furious storm came upon the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Lord, save us. We're going to drown." He replied, "You have little faith. Why are you so afraid?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and waves obey him." So Jesus has power over the physical world as well. I always thought it's funny how he's like, "You have little faith. Why are you so afraid?" But they asked him, like they went to him and they told him, "Please help us." So I always thought that was funny because they are being faithful. Like they believe that Jesus would help them. So that's why they went and wake him up. But I don't know. That's just I just don't get it. Like I think they were showing faith, but maybe I'm missing something there. Jesus restores two demon possessed men. When he arrived at the other side of the region of Gardenes, two demon-possessed men coming from the tombs met him. They were so violent that no one could pass that way. "What do you want with us, Son of God?" they shouted. "Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time?" Some distance from them, a large herd of pigs were feeding. The demons begged Jesus, "If you drive us out, send us into the herd of pigs." So he said to them, "Go." So they came out and went into the pigs, and the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and died in the water. Those tending the pigs ran off, went into the town, and reported all of this, including what happened to the demon possessed men. Then the whole town went out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they pleaded him to leave that region. Jesus heals two demon possessed men, but gets begged to leave. Why? The reason why is because at this time, Jewish people weren't meant to eat pork, so pigs. So when Jesus threw the demons into the pigs and all they died, people were scared because one, he was affecting their livelihood, but also two, it's like he kind of shined their sin on them, their disobedience, and they didn't like that. In our next video, we're going to break down this chunk of verses and we'll go more in depth into the context and apply it to our lives. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.